loving me, I loving you. Mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, sisters and brothers, friends for life, won't live in the past. All I wanna do now is making it last.
Why are we having such a hard time in our personal relationships? No, that is different than before. That is what we're going to be talking about this time around. Welcome to Making It Last podcast. I'm your host, Noreen Delia, and with me is Karen Tibbals, the author of Persuade, Don't Preach. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Noreen. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So why is it we're having such a hard time in our personal relationships? We're going to take it that part, and we're going to add the other piece. Why is it that no, we're having such a hard time? Why?
Well, it's interesting because we still have the same stresses we always had. We still disagree with each other on the same things we do. We always disagreed with. But what's happened is we've added in another layer of things that we disagree about. We disagree about politics. We disagree about social issues. And that has made things much more complicated, and I think has broken a lot of relationships that wouldn't have been broken before this happened.
And so the difference then is just all of, well, what makes it so different though?
Well, the research shows that, and I'm going to talk from a U.S. perspective because there's a lot more research about the U.S., but I think this is true across the world in general. Political polarization has increased in the past few decades. And part of this is due to social media, where, you know, you used to only be able to hang out with the people that you saw physically. And now you can do it online, and you can find people who share your beliefs. And then the other factor that has been happening is a phenomenon that's called in the literature, it's called social sorting. And what that means is that people who believe similar things hang out with people they believe in. Now, part of that is online, but part of that is in person. So it used to be, at least here in the States, where, you know, let's say there was a factory and a factory owner lived in the town where the factory was. And his kids went to the school in the town, and the workers' kids went to school in the town, and, you know, they socialized together, and the factory owner might have lived in a bigger house in a better neighborhood, but he still saw people in the stores, and, you know, he was part of the community. Well, given the consolidation that's happened in the business world, the factory owners now own a lot of different factories in a lot of different places, and they move to a big city, and they hang out with other factory owners. They don't hang out with the workers. And their kids don't marry the workers' kids. They marry the kids of other factory owners or whatever. I'm simplifying things. But so that's social sorting, and those two factors have had a big impact, I think. But the other factor there's two other factors I'm going to talk about. Another one is that there's been a slow shift to the left politically in the U.S. The percentage of conservatives has stayed the same, but the moderates have become more liberal. And that's happening because we've gotten more caring as people. The research shows that people's degree of caringness has increased. People become more sensitive. And then finally, the last reason is that religion is in the decline in the developed world, and politics has replaced religion. So we have all these factors that we don't identify with our families as much. We identify with our friends. Politics is more important. We're not living with the other people who aren't like us. And we just don't understand each other as well anymore.
So
you know,
for somebody who's listening is saying, oh, yeah, so, okay, fine, this is happening. Why should I really care about all of this? That, yes, we're having a hard time. Is it that it's just what is and I just have to live with it?
Well, we don't have the secure base that we can go out into the world from. You know, it's different. It's different having a group of friends online than it is having somebody that in your life who you know loves you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you a story that I saw online. I was on a Facebook group, and a woman posted a picture of a text that she had gotten from her daughter. And her daughter was trying to get her to vote for a certain political person. And her daughter said that she would never talk to her mother again if the person didn't vote a certain way. And first of all, that's so sad. That's just so sad. That you would be willing to break a relationship
because
over
of
a single vote. A single vote. But then what happened is the woman posted this picture of the text in her Facebook group where there's a bunch of people who think like she does and going to vote like she does. And she gets support from the group for breaking the relationship with her daughter.
Wow.
And that just made things so much worse to me, that people would do things like that. And, you know, so you're getting you online, these women or whoever they were, getting in the middle between the mother and her daughter and saying, you're right to not talk. And you know, they're never going to, maybe they'll be restored. But the way it looked is, you know, this relationship could have been irrevocably broken. And it doesn't need to be. It really doesn't need to be that way.
I know you've been enjoying the conversation, but we're going to take a little break and get a word from our sponsor.
Does your business lack branding? Having difficulty realizing your vision? Look no further. Splinth Brand Design Consultancy specializes in developing personal and business brands. Services include strategic management, website creation, social media branding, and more. Visit them online at www.wearesplint.com. Splinth, the brand you need to succeed.
How can we then change all of this, though? Because, you know, at the end of the day, I'm hoping that out of this, somebody will say, hey, you know, let me try this approach. But, I mean, how can we then change it? Because we recognize that we're all having a hard time in our personal relationship. And for the most part, a lot of us would really prefer to be coexisting harmoniously with each other. So how can we then change that?
Well, it goes to the topic of my book, that we need to really think about how we talk to each other. So I'll tell you a Aesop fable that really goes with the theme of my book. So it's the fable of the sun and the wind. So the sun and the wind decided to see which one was the most powerful. So the way they were going to decide was which one could get the traveler to take off their cloak. And the wind went first, and it blew as hard as it could. But, of course, what happened is the traveler held on even more tightly to their cloak. And, you know, so the wind didn't win, right? And then the sun came out and warmed up the earth, and the traveler took off their cloak and sat on it to bask in the sun. So which one was the most powerful? I think the sun was. So if we can talk to each other in such a way that we can make each other relax, and we can listen to each other, and we can start to have a dialogue and not break off our relationships and start to come together. But it takes work, and it's not easy. And we need to know a new way of doing things. And that's what I've tried to create in my book, is a description of how you can do this, what are the steps to take to do it. But I have to say that this isn't easy work, and I had a relationship that failed with my aunt a few years ago. Before I knew this, and my aunt was saying something that I thought was rude, and I told her I thought it was rude, and I left, and I never saw her again. I mean, she died before we were reconciled. And I wish that I had known these techniques before she died, so that I could have reconciled with her.
Go ahead.
But I also think that she might be proud of me for doing it now.
I'm listening, and I'm thinking, and I'm saying, are there any broken relationships? No, for whatever reason, that I probably need to make an effort, because I've always been a habit of saying to my students, especially, life is short, and just as how you're taking the time to be doing all of this in terms of bettering yourself, you need to take the time to make sure that you stay connected to people that you really care about. And one of the things that you said just now is that it takes work. Because I think if we would sometimes expend some of the energy that we expend on our professional life, just a little bit, even on our personal life, we'd be much better. So I'm happy that you said it actually takes work, because anytime you're doing anything in regards to relationships and in terms of making sure that people understand each other, it will take work. And a lot of times, Karen, I think a lot of people expect that it won't take a lot of work. So if it's taking a lot of work, it means that something is wrong with the relationship.
No, but because things have changed, like I talked about at the beginning, that means we need to learn new skills. We need new tools. We need a new way to do this. Our old tools aren't going to work. They aren't working. I mean, because right now all we do is we yell, we name call, we break off relationships, and we don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
I've talked to psychologists; they don't have any ideas, But so what I found in the work that I've been doing is I found this work, and it's called political psychology, where they're talking about how the political group's different, how you can talk to each other politically. And I've created the system for how you can apply this to personal relationships. So I think this is groundbreaking work.
I know, and you've spoken about this book so much. I am going to ensure that I get a copy. So just before we close, just remind, since you are in the States, and yes, I'm based in Jamaica, but it doesn't mean that my listeners are only based in Jamaica. But for somebody who wants to get a copy of your book, just tell them how they'll be able to get that.
So the best way is to go to my website, persuadedon'tpreach.com, with no apostrophe in the don't, persuadedon'tpreach.com, and there you can see all the links to all the different places where you can buy it. So it's available in a lot of different places. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and a whole bunch of places.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing, Karen. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
This was Making It Last podcast. I'm your host, Noreen Daly. Until next time.
Making it last is all I care to do. You loving me, I loving you. Mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, sisters and